Hey guys, it's Camus, and welcome to our last round game of Michael Basman in the Four Nations Chess League individual rapid play event from 2013. This was played at a time control of 10 minutes plus 10 seconds. Let's see how this last game went. His opponent is playing white. His name is Robert Kane, no relation to me, and he's rated 1862. So we expect a win from Mr. Basman. But let's see what happens. His opponent begins. 1d4, b5. It would seem to be a Polish, but usually Basman transposes into either Creepy-Crawly or St.George from this particular move order. Bishop to f4. His opponent is playing a London system against the Polish at this point. Bishop b7, knight f3, e6, e3, a6. I'm not sure I've seen this particular move order before. He's got a chapter in his book about what to play against bishop to f4, but not usually in this move order. It probably doesn't make much difference. But anyway, we're in a St. George now. Knight b to d2. Sensible move, reserving the square c3 for the pawn in the event of c5. Knight f6. a4, standard way to break up the black queenside pawns, but black invariably plays b4 as he does in this case. Bishop to d3, h6, and c4. That went a little quick there, sorry. g5 followed. Basman's not afraid to leave his king in the center in these type of positions. Elsewhere he states that when you have the pawn triangle f7, e6, d7, that the king can actually be okay. And he likes to use these pawn thrusts in the wing to affect his plans and not castle. So oftentimes the rooks come out rather than being joined in the center. After castling, he likes to use rook lifts, like to rook to a6 or rook to h6, that sort of thing. Of course, neither one is possible here. So I guess we've actually moved from a St. George into a Creepy-Crawly, although there's a sort of gray overlap area. So after g5, naturally his opponent plays bishop to g3, h5. This is a provocative move because he's more or less offering this pawn on g5, which his opponent was afraid to take. He plays h4 here, but actually white could have taken this pawn. He could have played knight takes g5, bishop takes g2, rook to g1, bishop to c6, e4, rook to g8, h4, knight to g4, and white is actually a little bit better here. He can play f3 and get rid of that knight. I suppose we could play f6 and get rid of the knight on g5, but I would have to say that white looks a little better here, and the computer agrees. Black certainly has plenty of chances, though. But he decided not to take this pawn, so after h5, he played h4. And now, after g4, black is actually equalized, according to Ribka. He goes to knight to g5, and we take the pawn on g2. Rook to g1, bishop to g7. And this is actually fairly similar to the line that we just looked at. e4 was played, b3. Well, he could have played knight to h7 here, and that might have been a little better. Just trying to exchange off this annoying knight and create a pawn weakness on g5. He decides to sack a pawn. After e4, he plays b3, probably hoping to get some open lines, but of course this is a rapid play event. This pawn sacrifice is probably pretty worthless. In fact, after queen takes b3, Ribka considers that white has a winning advantage. It's hard to see where we think that Basman was trying to get his compensation, but anyway, he's forced to make Not the kind of move you like to make after a pawn sacrifice. He plays queen to c8, just defending that bishop. e5, all logical. At knight to g8, and white has a pretty good advantage here. The king is stuck in the middle. Well, I suppose white's in the middle too, but he can play castles queenside. No, it looks a little shaky over there. I don't know. So maybe king safety. Actually, black is better king safety wise. But this knight on g5 is annoying, and well, black's pieces, with the exception of his bishop on b7, are all in the back rank. So you would have to say that white's pieces are definitely placed better here. So after knight to g8, white decides to try to open the position with d5, and Basman plays a5. Bishop to e4, bishop to b4, d takes e6, d takes e6, castles queenside, knight to a6, bishop takes b7. Now, this is a natural move from white, but perhaps he didn't need to make this, because this allows black to uncramp his position, and now he ends up being a little bit better as a result of this exchange. Probably better was to play queen to e3 here, and after bishop to e7, queen to f4, and now we've got some serious pressure against the black king side. After knight to h6, f3, yeah, things look a little shaky for black here. So this would have been better than bishop to b7. So after knight to a6 from black, bishop to b7, queen takes b7, and now black is not quite so dire. Knight d to e4, rook to b8. Black threatens bishop to d2 check, winning the queen. White is alert, and he plays queen to d3. Now probably he should have played queen to e3. Then he would have the option of going to f4 like we saw in that last variation. And queen to f4 is going to be awkward for black. But he plays queen to d3 instead. And now queen to c6, f4 was played. And white, with this move f4, white throws away his advantage. Better was queen to c2, defending his a pawn with a roughly equal game, but perhaps he didn't notice his a pawn was attacked. So after queen to c6, he plays f4. Basman plays bishop to c5. He clears the b file and opens up the b4 square with tempo as he's attacking the rook on g1. It's a good move. Rook to g2, and now black takes his pawn on a4. And although this is a rook pawn, it's allowing the queen incursion into the queen side here. And it's not the loss of the pawn so much, but allowing black to start making threats against the white king is really the important factor in this position. Knight to c3, queen to c6. Worth considering here, instead of queen to c6 as Basman played, was queen to a1 check, king to d2, queen takes b2, king to e1, queen takes c3, queen takes c3, bishop to b4, queen takes b4, rook takes b4, and black is better. The game is still a struggle, but black is doing well here. Instead of that, after knight c3, he plays queen to c6, which is okay. And now white plays f5. Black cannot win the rook on g2, but queen takes g2, because he plays queen to d7 check, king to f8, and queen takes f7 is checkmate. So after f5, he plays knight to b4. Now it seems like a natural move, bringing the knight forward, attacking the queen, and making sort of threatening gestures in the general direction of the white king. But knight to e7 was probably a stronger move because it blocks the queen's access to f7. For instance, if you played knight to e7 here instead, then after something like f takes e6, the rook is actually now on prees, so he can take it. Queen takes g2, queen to d7. It's a little scary looking, but after king to f8, black simply wins because of this knight. He's doing an excellent job of blocking the black queen from doing any further, and really nothing comes of knight takes f7 or pawn takes f7 in this position. Black is just up a rook. So after f5, black plays knight to b4 instead. And now queen to e4, queen to e4. Well, he could have played e takes f5 here, I suppose. Queen takes c6, knight takes c6, and black has got a clear advantage in this position. But instead, after queen to e4, he just exchanges. And now, white makes a fatal error. What he should be doing is playing knight c takes e4. And black is going to be better in this position, but at least white is surviving. Bishop to e3 check, king to b1, e takes f5, e6, f takes e6, bishop takes c7. And the position is more or less dynamically equal. I think both sides have chances here. But instead, he takes with the wrong knight. And so after queen takes e4, he plays knight g takes e4. This knight was really well posted on g5. So it's rather inexplicable. Perhaps he felt he needed the knight on c3 for defense of his queen side. I don't know. But after bishop to e3 check, then this is actually winning for black. King to b1, e takes f5, knight to f6 check, knight to f6, e takes f6, f4, bishop to f2, castles, bishop takes e3, f takes e3, knight to d5, rook f to e8, rook to e2. He's got to stop this pass pawn. Rook b to d8, rook takes e3, rook takes e3, knight takes e3, rook takes d1, knight takes d1, entering a pawn-up ending where black has all the chances. Basman is an international master, and he's a good endgame player, so he doesn't mess this one up. King to h7, knight to e3, king to g6, knight to g2. The knight blockades the g pawn, and he's threatening. Knight to f4 check here. King takes f6, knight to f4, king to e5. He's just going to ditch the h pawn. Knight takes h5. White has won a pawn back, but it's hopeless. f5. Connected passed pawns. King to c1, f4, king to d2, g3, king to e2, knight to c6, knight takes g3. It's his only chance, but it's not enough. F takes g3, king to f3, knight to e7, king takes g3, knight to f5 check, king to g4, and now a class move from Basman. He just simply takes the pawn on h4. And we've got, after king takes h4, king to d4, a completely hopeless king and pawn endgame. So Basman did pretty well in this game. He didn't make any blunders or errors. There was a couple of better moves he might have made at a certain stage, but again, we were dealing with a rapid play game, and once he got his chance, he was like a bulldog and hung on to it and won. So this tournament was not quite as stellar as the Atkins tournament that we previously followed, where he had a 5-0 shutout, but he also had some stiffer competition, and really he had some chances in nearly all the games, even the games that he lost, including against Grandmaster Hebden. So for a 67, 68-year-old guy, he's still doing pretty good, especially considering that he's playing these crazy openings. Well, I don't think the St. George is crazy. The Creepy-Crawly, I'm not 100% convinced about, and I'm certainly I never liked the Borg or the Grub all that much. So, despite the fact I'm a Basman fan, uh, I'm a very particular Basman fan, and I actually tend to like, as I said, the St. George and some of the other lines, like the Bishop E2 Sicilian, and some other lines that he's and the English defense that he's espoused over the years, but not so much the Grub and the Borg. And the Creepy-Crawly just kind of looks homemade to me. And you can see in this tournament he got a number of not fantastic positions out of the openings. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the tapes to see if he actually got an advantage out of any opening. But he does well in chaotic positions, and he's a strong enough player that he can outplay most of his opponents even in an inferior position, and hence the secret of his success. We'll look forward to following more games and tournaments from Basman in the future, assuming that he continues to play. He's still playing. He's still active. So I haven't been able to find any recent games, but they will show up on the strange little dusty corners of the internet that I frequent, that are home to strange and unusual openings. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this series, and we'll see you for some other series soon. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.